Right, good afternoon. Oh, that's loud, sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. If we can move straight onto the agenda, item number 1 is the evacuation procedure. There's no fire alarms planned to go off tonight, so if they do, we'll treat it for real. And if we can exit the chamber from the doors either side, down the steps and meet across the road by the Yorkshire Bank, please don't try and use the lifts. And if anybody needs any assistance to get out, give us a shout, we'll make sure that happens. It's also a good time to remind people to turn off their phones or to put them on silent. And just finally on that item is the meeting is being recorded by a member of the public, and also the council records all its meetings as well, and they then put out via the council's website the day after or the day as soon as they can put them on. Item number 2 is to receive apologies. I've had apologies from Councillors Ian Lloyd, Councillor Gwyn Pomfret, Councillor Jill Shepherd and Councillor Grand, did you say?
Yeah, he went late, but he's put his apology in.
Anybody that I've missed? No? Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of September. Are you happy that I sign those as a true and correct record? Thank you. Thank you. And item 4 is to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary and other interests in accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct. Councillor Wilson.
Declaration number 1, the Whitestone Supermarket. Before I rejoined the committee, I did give a public statement of my position, which was against the application. Therefore, I have predetermined it, and I will leave the room after having my 3 minutes to speak, and I won't participate in the vote.
Okay, thank you. Which takes us on to item 5 of declarations of contact, where members may have been contacted by members of the public or agents, developers, etc. None? Okay then, that takes us on to item number 6, applications where the public have indicated a wish to speak, which is on each of our items tonight. So if I can run through that process for those of you that have maybe not been here before. When the item comes in front of us, the officer will make the report, and then members of the public will have their time to speak. Under the Constitution, you're allowed 3 minutes each. I will be strict on that 3 minutes. When the egg timer goes off, I will stop you from speaking. That's only so that it's fair to everybody else. However, if any points arise during that 3 minutes that members may seek clarification on, we can also do that. Following on from that, excuse me, the officer may want to come back at that point, but if not, we'll open it up for debate. To enable that to take place, somebody has to move and second the item, and then the debate will take place, and hopefully a decision will be reached today. I say hopefully because it isn't every time. Sometimes we defer items for site visits or for further information, but in the main we determine the application on the dates presented to us. Okay, in that case, Claire, are you doing all 3 of them? Okay, thank you. In that case, we can go on to item number 1 then, which is the Whitestone Supermarket application.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the change of use of part of an A1 convenience store to a pizza takeaway and the installation of associated extraction and ventilation equipment. Objections have been received as detailed on the agenda. Notwithstanding the objections that have been received, this application is also being reported to committee at the request of Councillors Wilson and Gutteridge. In 2010, there was a public inquiry held relating to, amongst other issues, the issue of an enforcement notice relating to an unauthorised operation of a hot food takeaway. This part of the inquiry was dismissed, with the inspector concluding that the takeaway would have a significant impact on residential amenity. It is established and agreed by the planning inspector that this site forms part of a local centre. Safe Policy S2 of the local plan states that new development in a local centre will be permitted as long as it protects the residential amenity of surrounding properties, has no impact on highway safety, and providing there is sufficient off-street parking. Safe Policy F7 of the local plan states that A3 to A5 uses are appropriate in a local centre, subject to certain criteria being met, including a sufficient gap between the use and residential properties, that sufficient ventilation and extraction are provided, there will be no impact on the free flow of traffic on adjacent highways, sufficient parking is provided, and there should be no more than 20% of A3, A4 and A5 uses in the centre. In relation to the impact on residential amenity and specifically noise, Environmental Health have advised they would accept hours of operation of between 9 a.m. and 11 p.m, which would reduce the potential for noise and disturbance during unsociable hours, particularly as the authorised opening hours of the existing shop are between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. This is added as condition 12. Condition 13 has also been added to restrict deliveries to the site to between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday, with no deliveries on Sundays or bank holidays. Environmental Health have also confirmed that the extraction system as proposed with silencers would not cause a noise nuisance to neighbouring properties. In relation to odour, Environmental Health have stated that they would have concerns about certain types of A5 uses, for example, frying, but have advised that by restricting the cooking equipment, this could be acceptable in relation to odours. This is covered under condition 14. Details showing an extraction system and odour and ventilation report have also been submitted with the application, which ties the use to dry ovened baked goods with no frying. The application also specifically proposes a pizza takeaway, and this would be controlled under condition 11 to ensure it could not be used for any other hot food takeaway use. Neighbour objections also refer to concerns that a takeaway would increase antisocial behaviour in the area. Warwickshire Police have been consulted and have no objection providing conditions are added covering hours of operation, the restriction of the use to a pizza takeaway, and that CCTV cameras are installed. Condition 4 has been added that details of CCTV cameras need to be submitted. In terms of visual amenity, there are no proposed significant changes to the external appearance of the building. The proposed extraction is sited within the building with 2 small ducts on the side elevation and would not be over prominent. The proposal provides 9 parking spaces, which is to be shared with the remaining A1 use. The council no longer has any saved car parking standards, and therefore it will be difficult to refuse an application on the lack of parking. County Highways have objected to a non-prescribed hot food use, but have no objection if the use was restricted to a pizza takeaway, as this type of takeaway tends to function with less customer movements. The recommendation is therefore approval, subject to conditions as detailed on the agenda and addendum. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Claire. Sandra Owens.
I'm a resident who lives almost directly opposite this premises, and we have been round this loop rather a large number of times, as some of you may recognise me from previous visits. Notwithstanding all the things that have been said, I have experience living on this road opposite this premises when it's been operated as a hot food takeaway, and it is not acceptable for this neighbourhood. So after about 6 p.m. every night, when everyone's gone home, apart from a few cars visiting the garage to get fuel and a few people picking up their subway, it's pretty quiet. And now there's a proposal to introduce a business which is going to basically have delivery traffic in and out of that site up until 11 o'clock at night, delivering to people who don't live there, so not inconveniencing them but inconveniencing us. The additional traffic and noise coming from the vehicles entering and exiting those premises. You may not know, but the houses opposite this premises are lower than the site, and the lights from the traffic from the vehicles exiting that site shine directly into the windows of those houses. We have had experience with smells. I am supposed to be given some reassurance by the extraction. I understand my experience of driving past the KFC in Weddington says that top-end extraction doesn't work in terms of smell reduction, and smell reduction really is about the management of it, not just the equipment that you're going to put in there. And we've had no confidence in the people that have run this premises in the past to do things which are in the interests of the neighbourhood. Antisocial behaviour, we had to have CCTV installed on the lamppost opposite our home to deal with antisocial behaviour the last time this was run as a hot food takeaway, because it attracts young people, and young people want to enjoy themselves, they want fun, they make noise, and that's not really what you want in a neighbourhood that wants to go to sleep at 6 o'clock when there are a lot of young children around. In terms of traffic, I don't think it will be a problem in the morning because nobody wants pizza at breakfast time, but certainly at night time I think it would add to the traffic on that road, and I don't believe that any decent traffic survey is being carried out to see whether there's an impact from that traffic. I think it's quite clear that I am against this development, and I do hope that the committee and the councillors take my points into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you just press your button off? No? Mr. Fergus Sykes.
Sykes, and I'm from Pegasus Group, who represent the applicant. The most prevalent concern raised by the objectors is the perceived harmful impact on amenity, and in particular in relation to odours. However, the extraction system has been carefully designed and has been fitted with high specification carbon filters to sufficiently treat odours and ensure that they do not cause any unacceptable harm. Following detailed discussion with the Council's officers, it has been agreed that conditions could be added to any decision notice restricting the cooking operations to prevent any frying or deep fat frying. Furthermore, it has been agreed that a condition will be added ensuring that the site is used as a pizza takeaway only and for no other purpose within Class A5 of the use classes order. The Council's Environmental Health Officer has reviewed the submitted information and is satisfied that provided the extract system is installed in accordance with the approved details and conditions are added restricting the use and cooking operations, then the proposal will cause no unacceptable impact to amenity. It should be noted that the takeaway subject of a previously dismissed appeal at the site clearly did not have an appropriately designed and installed system and was serving a variety of foods, creating a greater level of odours and smells. A noise report has been submitted in support of the application, illustrating that the plant equipment will not cause any unacceptable disturbance due to noise, provided mitigation measures such as silencers and acoustic linings are installed. A condition has been added to ensure that within 1 month of the store's opening, a further noise report is submitted to demonstrate that the noise from the extract and ventilation equipment is meeting the levels specified within the approved report. The proposed opening hours of 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. are less than the authorised hours of the convenience store, which were between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. Therefore, it is considered that these are reasonable. The proposed takeaway will result in the reoccupation of a vacant commercial unit, which has been empty for a significant period of time and is detracting from the appearance of the area. The reuse of this building will improve the appearance of the reuse of the building will improve the area and create a greater amount of footfall in this local centre. The proposed store could generate a number of full and part-time jobs and will provide job opportunities for local residents. For these reasons, it is respectfully requested that you agree with your officer's recommendation and approve the application subject to the necessary conditions. Thank you.
Clarification? No? Councillor Gutteridge.
As Councillor of Whitestone, I wish to speak about this proposed development of the former Whitestone supermarket, which lies on Lutterworth Road. I have had many concerned residents approach me regarding the development of this site. The proposed development of the site lies on a plot of land by a busy petrol station and two busy roads, Lutterworth Road and Bulkington Road. Both of these roads are main routes into Nuneaton from Bulkington, Alvey and the surrounding villages. There will be additional footfall at the site, leading to additional traffic and issues with parking around the site. Residents are concerned that there will be an increase of traffic and noise around the site, especially late at night, with customers and their cars entering and leaving the premises. Residents have also raised issues concerning the smells and odour, which could be emitted during cooking of items from the takeaway. This has previously been an issue for the residents when the site was previously used as a fast food outlet. There is also all the waste smells that will be created. This obviously will be worsened in the summer months. Due to the history of this site, there has been concerns relating to the advertisement of the property, including bright lights. It could also be an area where antisocial behaviour could arise, causing disturbance for residents. If the proposed development goes ahead, I hope and pray that the council will strictly adhere to the rigorous schedule of conditions. Thank you.
No? Councillor Wilson.
I feel like I've gone full circle on this application, because when I was first elected almost 8 years ago, it was a problem, and I was receiving weekly updates from officers because of the scale of the problem. And I know, having had discussions with Catherine, that officers have worked hard to try and mitigate these problems, but I am not reassured, unfortunately. There is a significant amount of traffic on Lutterworth Road. Indeed, the Borough Plan consultation document says that the B4114 Lutterworth Road is one of the most congested roads in our borough. And yet this site is right by a critical pinch point of those double islands, which I have not found one single person in all my years in living in Whitestone that actually likes those double islands or think they work. But adding this additional pressure onto that point is going to cause problems. Councillor Guttridge has already mentioned about the issues ongoing, but what I would like to focus on is the change of use to A5. Now, I understand officers have tried to pin it down to one particular usage within the A5 category, but my concern is that once you give permission for it to change use, you have established the principle that that use is fine for all the other sorts of uses within the use classification, which would not be suitable in these areas. And I have questions whether a pizza place is suitable within this area. We have the undertaking from the current people who want to take this on. But who's to say in a year's time, 2 years' time, they sell this property on, and then it wants to come back to vary the conditions from this application to remove the restriction that it's only pizza. Once you've established the principle that A5 is suitable full stop, whether it's pizza, whether it's fish and chips, whether it's Chinese or Indian, whatever. And that is my main concern. Residents are extremely concerned about this because of their past history and performance of the previous owner. I hope and I take on board that the current representatives want to be better neighbours than the previous owners, but people can only go on the performance they've had to date, and that hasn't been very good. And I don't want to go back, and I'm sure officers don't want to go back either, to the situation we had 8 years ago. So I would ask and beg my fellow committee members not to approve this. The history is overwhelming. The inspector said that certain uses would not be suitable. I don't think anything has changed, and unfortunately officers cannot give me the reassurance about the other A5 uses within the A5 classification, because we are relying to a certain extent on the goodwill of the current applicant to accept that restriction and condition. Once it's gone, we've established the principle, we can't do anything else to change it. Changing it from A1 to A5 is a substantial change in the usage of this supermarket. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Perfect timing, Councillor. Are there any... No? Claire, anything else at this point? No? In that case, can I, to enable debate to take place, move the recommendation which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed? Is that seconded? Any member? Councillor Longdon.
Having seconded it, because I'm not, I only got it, somebody get it on the floor. I'm not happy with this when I read it through and then read it through again. I think the issue really is why we seem to be getting loads and loads of applications for hot food takeaways. Why this particular location, where it is, and what it's all about, and I'm not comfortable, and I do sympathise with what Councillor Wilson said. Once it's gone, basically on A5. So the issue is, do we do it now and then pick up the pieces later on, or do we object to it now and follow the line of the inspector? And for me, I think that location, that judgment was made on that location, was it 7-8 years ago, and I don't think that anything's particularly changed since then. So I will be opposing the application.
Yeah. Councillor Tony Lloyd.
Chair, this area has had one hell of an history on me over the years. I've sat on this committee about 23 years now, and I've been involved. And I must admit, and I'll just make comment to my fellow councillor, I mean, I've objected and voted against this area on many occasions, although it's up and running in various ways. I mean, they wanted to put cable, television things and green boxes on the corner and all sorts of weird, and by the garage, and then the buildings, extending of the buildings. And that area where it is, we've always thought, well, I always thought it was, with the shops and everything there, what it is one hell of an area. And I think it's a very the road and the amount of traffic and people coming in and out just round there is horrendous. So, you've only got to come there normal with the amount of islands there. And when in the morning busy, in the afternoon, it's just horrendous. And then now what we want to do is open a shop with food that doesn't give the residents a great deal of break or anything. With the smell and everything, and I agree with the comments that's been made over the time, and I've always thought, Bill, okay, you have to look at it, and we've been on visits there, we've been and looked and seen all sorts of things with ventilations and cabins and all sorts of things up there. Everybody's tried to get on that corner. I don't quite know why that corner with all the garage and now the roads and things, people want to build and become so popular for development. And I like the area. I've never really think it's suitable on just there where it is. And I've not changed my opinion of the whole of the area there. And I'm going to tell you today, Chair, I'm not going to change it again today. I think it shouldn't be developed anywhere into this. And that's how I will go today when the time comes and you ask us to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Well, I'm pretty much with everybody else on this. I think the history speaks very loudly, and although there's obviously been a lot of work done by officers and a responsible developer, I am concerned about what might happen in the future. And And I go with Councillor Wilson. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I'm not sure that we have the controls in future to stop it turning into something else with A5 use. I'm struggling, however, as we often do, to find a reason to reject it, because if it goes to appeal, we need to be sure there's a good planning objection to it. I'd like some clarification on what safeguards we've got in terms of if we give it A5 use, in any year's time it turns into or applied not to be a pizza outlet. What safeguards have we actually got to stop that?
Well, the application you're considering tonight is specifically for a pizza takeaway, and that is conditioned as well that it is to remain as a pizza takeaway and no other use. If in the future somebody else wants to use it for another use within hot food takeaway, they would have to apply to vary that condition, and we would assess the application in the normal way in terms of the impact on residents, noise, smells, odours, highway safety at that time. What you're considering tonight is the acceptability of a pizza takeaway in that location.
Thank you, Chair. Traffic one's an interesting one. When I read, because obviously I read at the beginning of this report that the highway, the county highway. Again, highways. I read in this report somewhere that the highways object, and then when they have more details, they don't object. Now the reason being that it's not going to be fish and chip shop, that sort of thing, and it's going to be a pizza place. And I dare say they must have some data about the amount of traffic that these places pull in. I'm not actually convinced by that, but I'm not a traffic expert. But it does worry me from that aspect. On the thing about the A5 use, yeah, I'm a bit concerned about that as well, because once you've given permission for something within that use, it is difficult, or it can be in the future, to pull it back. And I'm not saying that this applicant is going to do this, but what would happen if the applicant had this, the pizza's not quite working out, not quite making the profit that they would want, so then they do introduce something that fries and smells and whatever, then we've got a problem then with that particular applicant. Now, I am making no assertion that the applicant would do that, but it might be somebody else buys it off them under the same conditions and they decide to do that. So that presents me with a little bit of difficulty. I'm always interested by all these newfangled ways of stopping smells happening. I do have to say, they're all over the place, takeaways, aren't they? We're a nation of takeaways. And the smells are there. Even outside, you can understand it with a shop that's maybe had permission for a long while and their equipment's old and whatever. But I've passed shops here and other places that look extremely new and modern and set up, and you know what? They still smell. And so if you live next door to them, it must be a problem. It was asked by, Barry said about lots of applications. Yeah, we just get lots of applications because that's how we are as a society now. Some people go to food banks and can't go to places like that. Other people think nothing of, and hey ho, I'm guilty as well, picking up the phone or whatever and ordering things. It's just how we are. But I do have these concerns, but I'm also looking at what the planning officers are saying that they're putting it for approval. So it's a bit of a balanced one. But there certainly is, I agree, some history in that area. As soon as I seen Whitestone Supermarket, I thought, I know exactly where that is. Thank you.
If I could just ask, and it's kind of covers a couple of the points that have been made already. The first one is there's clearly a concern over highway safety, and there was a county objection to it. I want to be clear, all of that concern that the county may have had is no longer there.
Yeah. They objected to an A5 use, blanket A5 use, but not specifically to a pizza takeaway. Because they see it as that sort of use doesn't have many comings and goings from customers as other A5 uses do.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point I was coming to, that Councillor Copeland sort of hinted at, is my personal experience of a pizza takeaway is most of it isn't a takeaway, it's a delivery service. But yeah, I can understand the future concern if it became, say, a fish and chip shop, nothing to do with the smells or whatever, but people tend to collect the stuff from a fish and chip shop rather than it be delivered. Which brings me on to, again, with the highway stuff. Would it be fair to say, do you think, that the existing A1 use would have perhaps generated more traffic movements than the proposal for this type of A5 use? It was a supermarket, wasn't it?
Yes, and it still has permission to be used as a retail unit.
Okay. You weren't able to answer my question, but that's okay. Is there any other member wish to speak? Councillor Copeland, I'll bring you back in as there's nobody else.
Okay, could I ask one specific question then?
Oh,
You told my voice is loud enough. Oh, that's only my wife. Yeah. A specific question then. The application is granted. I'm going to put it, not this applicant, but he sells the business on, shall we say. Somebody else comes in, knowing full well they can only make pizzas there and that, but they then introduce different types, boiling oil to fish and chips, or whatever they do. And what is the procedure then for the council?
As restricting the use to a pizza takeaway, there's also a condition on the recommendation that it's restricting the types of food that are, and how food is cooked to convection ovens only with no frying. So any future use that wanted to start frying food or other types of cooking would have to apply to vary that condition. It's condition 14 on the agenda.
But Chair, with the respect, what I'm saying is, you as a planning officer and I and everybody here, people break the rules. That's what we don't in the planning department. What I'm saying is somebody in the future, breaks the rule and actually introduces it. What's the procedure? So you have then the residents coming to a reception in the council. What happens?
That would be then open to enforcement action, which would then be investigated by our department and our enforcement officers, potentially breach of condition, for example.
And that would happen?
Yes. If we got, yes.
okay. Is there anything you want to add to anything, Claire? In that case, the recommendation has been moved and seconded, and that's to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed. All those in favour? And against? 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. So that's approved then. Thank you. Okay, that takes us on to item number 2 then, the Guru Tech Bahadur Gurdwara. Thanks, Claire.
This application is for the variation of the condition relating to hours of operation of a previous planning permission. The condition on the original permission states that no activity shall take place other than between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. Mondays to Saturdays and 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sundays. This application proposes to vary the hours on a Sunday to between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. Objections have been received as detailed on the agenda. In relation to the impact on residential amenity, there are residential properties located immediately adjacent and surrounding the application site. Condition 4 of the original permission restricts the first floor activity to between 8 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. Mondays to Saturdays and between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Sundays for religious services and prayers. The temple also carries out marriages, engagements, funerals and other religious ceremonies. There are other conditions on this original application which restrict amplified sound and numbers of people that can be present on the site at any one time. An application was approved in 2000 for the change of use of part of the ground and first floor to a Sikh community centre in association with the existing community use. This is currently used as a gym at ground floor and day centre at first floor with associated kitchen and storeroom. This has the same open hours as part of the building subject to the current application. An application was approved in 2013 for the change of use from an industrial B2 unit to form part of the Sikh temple, and that's that area there. This was for a large hall at ground floor which is used for social gatherings in connection with the temple, for use after religious ceremonies and for use by community groups. That application for that part of the building restricts the hours of operation from 9 a.m. till 11 p.m. The applicant has advised that the main group of worshippers on a Sunday arrive at 9:30 in the morning and the service finishes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. However, they have advised that the building needs to be open longer in order that food can be prepared before worshipping and to give time for clearing up the kitchen and hall after the service. The proposed hours are therefore 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. Environmental Health have concerns, but officers consider that these hours would be acceptable on a Sunday in a residential area. Based on the planning history of the site and the longer opening hours for other parts of the building, it is considered by allowing the hours proposed, it would not lead to a significant increase in noise at unsociable hours to warrant a recommendation of refusal. In terms of highway safety, there is an existing car park to the front of the building which has approximately 9 spaces, and the council no longer has any saved car parking standards. To a degree, the temple serves the local Sikh community within walking distance and is close to public transport facilities, the town and district centre. County highways have raised no objections, and the National Planning Policy Framework only refers to refusal when there are severe highway impacts. It is therefore considered that refusal on highway grounds would be unreasonable and difficult to justify at appeal. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, as detailed on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Mr. Whelan.
It's been brought to light because they've been waking residents up from 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning and sometimes 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, which is not acceptable. They proposed from 7 until 7 on a Sunday. We've only just realised now when we've got it, they've changed it to 8 till 3. But we still think that's too early, since there's a lot of residents with children to be woken on a Sunday morning. We would accept 9 till 2. That gives 5 hours for them to have their prayers and everything. We don't think people should be woken on a Sunday morning before 9 o'clock. That is our objection.
Okay, have you done, Mr. Whelan? Yeah. Okay, thank you. No? Mr. Bahia.
I am one of the trustees of the temple, Mr. Bahia. The original times that were set was set 22 years ago when the building first opened, and there had been no changes. But due to the circumstances of the change of the building's use and locality getting a bit bigger, we think we need to change the hours. The 10 till 2 we were coping with as good as we can, because 10 o'clock the religious ceremony starts, and by 1:30 the religious ceremony finishes. So for the ladies to cook, because in our Sikh society we have what we call a langar, which is food made up for the worshippers. That doesn't give them enough time, and it's always a problem getting everything ready and then getting everything cleared up and cleaned up and leaving the premises clean. So hence we applied for the change of hours. On the same note as Mr. Wellen saying, the council is aware that we have functions about 8-9 times a year, which we call as a Akhand Path, which goes on for 3 continuous days, because the Holy Book has to be read in those 3 days, and the 3rd day it is finished. We celebrate and we put the book to rest. Now, those 3 days, we got no choice but the priest coming in to read the book in the night time, because to read the book, you cannot read the book more than 2 hours at a time. So we need priests to come in to read the book. But this is all clarified with the council, and the council know that these things do happen. But going back to Sunday, the change of hours, I would help a lot if from 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock is approved. Thank you.
Points of clarification? No? Claire, anything at this point? No? In that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation? Is that seconded? Any member? No? Well, the recommendation is as printed, which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed. All those in favour of that? Thank you. That's unanimous. That's approved. Okay, thank you. If we can move on to item number 3 then, Meadowcraft Farm. Claire, when you're ready, thank you.
This is an outline application for the erection of up to 23 dwellings. Access is also being considered at this stage. Objections have been received as detailed on the agenda and addendum. In terms of the principle of residential development on the site, it is recognised that the council currently does not have a 5-year supply of deliverable housing land, which weighs significantly in favour of the application. The site falls within the countryside designation in the current local plan. However, this policy is considered out of date as the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. The development would constitute development on previously developed land, which is encouraged in the MPPF. The application would also contribute to the supply of housing, including affordable. The site is within the landscape buffer zone in the emerging borough plan. However, the site is already built up and carries a certain amount of urbanised character due to the number of buildings currently on the site. The small parcel of land adds very little to the quality of landscape character, which was the primary basis for the landscape buffer. The access to the site is to be within the current location. Some details have been submitted showing a remodelled junction which would include a 2 metre wide pedestrian footway leading out of the site to some lowered tactile paving, forming a crossing and a small refuge island in the middle of the road to allow crossing of the road to use the footpath on the northern carriageway. The existing right turn priority lane will be retained and the works could be carried out within the highway boundary under a Section 278 agreement. Warwickshire County Council highways have been consulted, but since the proposals affect the A5, they have no objection and deferred to Highways England for their response. Highways England have responded with no objection, subject to conditions. In relation to visual amenity, as it is an outline application, matters such as layout, scale and appearance are not being considered at this stage. An illustrative layout, as shown on the screens, has been submitted, which shows how the site could be developed, including retaining the existing house, which is shown there. In terms of residential amenity, the layout shows that the site could be developed to meet distance standards to the existing house on the site. An assessment of this and distance standards between the proposed properties will be made at the reserved matters stage. In relation to ecology, a condition has been added for details of an ecological and landscape management plan to be submitted to help mitigate any harm. The County Flood Risk Team have no objection, subject to a condition relating to surface water drainage, which is covered under Condition 19. In terms of planning obligations, Parks and Countryside have requested £36,793 towards improvements at Riversley Park, Buttermere Park, Sandon Park and allotment provision. There will be 25% affordable housing. As detailed on the addendum, George Eliot Hospital Trust have requested £13,259 to be used to help facilitate the running of the A&E facility at the hospital. The Sports Development Team have requested a contribution, but as this is based on a tariff, it is not considered to be SIL compliant. The recommendation is therefore approval, subject to conditions and the completion of a 106 legal agreements. Thank you.
Councillor Condicore.
Thank you very much, Chair. It might be useful to look at page 44 on your agenda, which shows where the A5 Aquatics is. It is along the A5 between the Long Shoot and the Higham Lane. That's a 1.5 mile section. It's half a mile from the Long Shoot roughly and a mile from Higham Lane. People living at this site with families will have to walk along the A5 for almost a mile and then go down Higham Lane about a third of a mile to get to the closest primary school. There is not a pavement on the south side of the A5 for 200 metres. So effectively you're asking children to cross the A5 at this tactile crossing, walk a mile along the A5 and then cross again at the Higham Lane roundabout, which also isn't controlled, to get to the nearest primary school. This is effectively a very long way from Nuneaton as far as roads and routes are concerned. There is no connection between the A5 and St Nicholas Park Estate at the moment. This is a very unsustainable location, and it's really appalling that our planning policy people haven't actually responded. If you look in your paperwork, there's no response from planning policy. In the previous local plan, this is countryside. In the next local plan, if it gets approved, this is a landscape buffer. This is highly important. Neither the old plan or the new plan has this as housing. It's a very unsustainable location, and we really do need, as an absolute, as you see on the diagram, from this development to the pavement at the nearest housing. Not having a pavement, how can this be sustainable? The absolute lowest level of sustainability is you actually have a footpath to the site, and the A5 is not a suitable road for people walking on grass verges or running across in poorly lit, busy A roads. I really ask you to go and see this site. Do a site visit, because if someone dies, whatever, this has an accident. This is a really, really bad site, and we are just passing the buck between the highways, the Warwickshire County Council. Everyone thinks it's not our responsibility to judge the safety of this site. Also, we've got the 5-year land supply. Coventry is reporting on their 5-year land supply and their local plan in about 2 weeks. So really, if you do defer to have a look at the site and the pedestrian aspects, it'll be a good time to have an update on the 5-year land supply, because we've got issues with this council says if we have our own local plan, we will have a 5-year land supply because of the allocation of green belt, etc. So there's a lot of issues that need sorting. The planning issues about the buffer, the location being sustainable, walking, cycling, all the things to make it a safe site to have 23 family homes. And then you've got the planning issues over the 5-year land supply. And if we have got a 5-year land supply for our own needs, and if we were building extra housing for Coventry Overshoot on the A5, 1.5 miles from the nearest school, half a mile from the nearest bus stop, not suitable.
Thank you, Councillor Condon. No? Claire, anything to come back at this point? Okay, then to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation? Is that seconded? Yep. Any member? Councillor Wilson.
Unusual for me to agree with Councillor Condacor, but whilst I wouldn't quite articulate his argument the way he has, I don't disagree with a single word he said, to be perfectly honest. When I looked at this application, the word that screamed out at me was Bramcote, because it reminds me so much of the Bramcote site that it is so far out of the way and disconnected from any of the local amenities, and yet to say it is sustainable defies to me common logic. If you were to go to the man on the street, they would not say that is connected in any way to Nuneaton, it is not connected in any way to local services, it is not sustainable. And to have a situation where at a time we're trying to encourage children to walk to school, I quite often as I drive to work see these school patrols where they're all wearing the high-vis jackets and things like that. How are you going to get children from that area to school without insisting that they drive? That isn't sustainable at a time when this council's policy is to say we should be encouraging these sorts of things. And I find it interesting that we have on the one hand a PowerPoint presentation which says we have no 5-year housing land supply, but 4-5 weeks ago now we had a cabinet decision saying we believe we have a 5-year housing land supply, this is what we're submitting to the inspector. This should give us more protection when it comes to planning applications. Surely that cabinet decision is designed entirely to protect us in this situation. That landscape buffer is vital to differentiating us between Nuneaton and Bedworth and Hinckley and Bosworth and our other neighbours. If this council is so committed and convinced that it's got its numbers right in the cabinet report, try it. Reject this application, send it to the inspector, and if the applicant wants to challenge it, put their recommendations to the inspector and say, no, you've got it wrong, because if that inspector says we've got it wrong, then the borough plan has got no chance, because the inspectors would be looking and basing on the same principles. So I won't be supporting this application. It is completely isolated, and we should not be, as a council, establishing isolated communities. One of the issues, although it's not strictly speaking my ward, but it might as well be because it's just over the border with Bramcote, is we can't get, because of the facilities and the remoteness, are the refuse collections in. How are we going to get the refuse collections in on this one? We're going to have to set up special ones to get there, as we are with the Bramcote services now. It makes no sense whatsoever. There is no rhyme and reason to this application. In my view, it is the applicant seeing the writing on the wall and chancing their arm before a borough plan is in place and wanting to get their particular site selected. So I say, if we've got the confidence in our numbers, which is open to debate, then let's try it and put it before the inspector and let him rule on whether we have a 5-year housing land supply now or not. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other member? No? In which case the application has been moved and seconded, and the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to a legal agreement and the conditions printed. All those in favour of that? And against? 2. That's approved. I don't have any other items, so we've finished, haven't we? Can I thank you for your attendance and declare the meeting closed?